Hey class, this is your instructor Alan Crockett, and I'm going to be showing you this week a really quick, easy method of colorizing black and white photographs. Um, this is a method I kind of figured out for myself because I just could not stand going through all the details and everything of the other methods I saw. So anyway, if you're like me and you want something really quick and easy, this is the method for you. And I'm going to show you a couple cool steps with the new Photoshop 2 of how to do the generative expand and some of the neat things about the spot healing brush, in addition to some of the neural filters. So let's get with it. Okay, after you've imported your image into Photoshop, I'm going to show you a couple fun things to do with it. Remember, if you want to look at it full size, Command 0 and you get full size. And if you go Command negative, you can kind of shrink it down. So one fun thing to do is to go to your filter and go to neural filters. Kind of all the new AI filters on there. There's a great one called photo restoration, and if you click that on, you can kind of change the amount of photo enhancement. It'll just kind of automatically try to get rid of some of the problems with the low resolution images if you should have those. And we're going to put this on a new layer so we can take a look at it. Say okay. And I'm going to kind of zoom in here so you can kind of see what we're talking about here. So Command plus zooms in. So this is with the new layer on. This is the filter here. If I take the filter off by taking the visibility off of this layer, you can see what it looked like before. It had all those scratches and it kind of smoothed out those things. You can over smooth out things, but you can always kind of undo things with Photoshop, so it's good to play around with these things, but you can really see how that cleaned up a lot of the images, kind of fogged them up, blurred them a little bit. But in this case, it kind of gives you a better starting point. The other neural filter that might be fun for you to check out with this assignment is their colorize one. Now this one, unfortunately, it doesn't work that well. It does do some things. You can change. This is the auto color image, and you can get into some details. You can change the saturation if you want it to be a little more saturated. You can push it more to the red, or all these different adjustments. So I would play around with that. If you want to see what you're doing large, kind of move it to the side. You can see what it looks like a little better. Take a little of the color artifact reduction down, okay, and let's just put that on a new layer so we can take a look at it too. You can see, like, this is what it looked like without it. It kind of added some violets to the sky, got some nice greens over here to work with. The one thing I'll say about these like neural filters is they do offer you a quick starting point to manipulate an image, which can be pretty nice. For this colorizing thing that might be interesting for people to play with, and the neural filters, is this color transfer one. When you go to this and you go to custom, you can select any image that you want to add the colors from that image. Like I actually had a colorized version of this picture that I'd done before doing this demo. So I could say, use this image, and it would use my colorized version to basically color it a little more. And so you can change the luminance, which kind of makes it either stronger or more transparent or less transparent. And then there's the color strength, which will pump the strength up and maybe add a little more saturation. Let's brighten it up a little bit because it's probably good to be able to see this better. Okay, and we'll put that on a new layer, and that'll be the last of these neural filters that I'll play with today, showing you. So you can kind of see it really darkened it in quite a bit. If I wanted to change this particular one, I could go image, auto color, and it'd probably clean it up a little bit more. So that did quite a bit really fast. In the old days, just to get to here would take you a ton of time. So there's a lot of great new tricks in Photoshop right now that are making things way easier to play with. If you decide, hey, I'm pretty good with this right now as it is, one good thing to do is you could either save a copy of it, or you could just do this if you don't really feel that committed. But you go to layer and you flatten it. And this way, anything you do will just be on one image. Everything's in one area, the background. It can get confusing when you have a bunch of layers that are just adjusting for things. So I recommend, like in a lot of these assignments, if you're doing painting over an image or something like that with a brush tool, to flatten it so that you don't have to search for where you are in the image. So let's do one more cool new trick, and that is the generative expand. If you haven't played with it, it's kind of a neat thing. You go to the crop tool over here, and you just kind of stretch out your image to how far out you would like to see it expanded to. We just recently did the panorama. You can actually create a panorama artificially by doing the generative expand. So let's just expand it a little bit. A good rule of thumb with this new generative expand is don't expand it too much, because the Photoshop will have a difficult time figuring out how to deal with too much information at once. So you could write what you want to expand in there, but in this case, what you want is this background, and it kind of knows that. So you just hit generate, and you need an internet connection to do this. So it's good to have a good internet connection, because you can see it goes slower depending on how much your information you're doing or what. And then it will give you the beautiful thing about this whole generative expand. It'll give you a bunch of choices over here in variations, and you can look at these different choices, and sometimes there's one that appeals to you more than another. You can see there's some weird artifact up here that happened on that one. But you get all these different choices. There's a lot of complexity in there. This one, to me, seems kind of the best of all the choices for me. So I'm going to pick this one. Another little thing to remember with generative expand, if for some reason you don't like any of these three variations, you can just do it again, and it will do it again. And it will give you a whole nother set of choices to choose from that you can then make into your piece. We've gotten quite a ways forward. I'm pretty happy with this one. I'm just going to stick with it, and I'm going to go to layer and flatten image again. So everything is flattened into one image again. And that way, as I work on this, I won't have to do all kinds of crazy things. One other trick I want to show you real quick. I've showed you in another video, but just to put it all into one place. If I didn't like the sky and I wanted to do something a little more dramatic, or just more clouds or whatever, I go to edit and down to sky replacement. And it takes it a second, but you can see if I move this out of the way, especially in Command 0 it up, you can see I can create this kind of grandiose sky behind this whole thing, which really increases the drama of the picture a great deal. So that's one option. If you go to different skies, there are some preloaded ones in your Photoshop, but you can also add your own skies by clicking on that little plus sign and finding different skies. And anyway, I'm not going to do that right now because it'll take too long, but it's a great thing to have a collection of different kinds of skies to draw from. You can kind of see the effect on changing the skies immediately, changes the whole tenor of your picture. It will do some things. Sometimes different pictures are different, but sometimes like these smokestacks in this case get a little disappear a little bit, and you have a little problem because it's having a hard time with all this crisscrossy stuff, what to do with it. So you may have to go in there and manually do some kind of erasing and playing around with it. But play around with this, get an idea of maybe what you want in terms of a sky, and go from there. Let's see what this one looks like. Oh, that's pretty industrial. I kind of like that one. Anyway, so once you get that, we're going to put it on a new layer again, which is nice. And let's get rid of that. So I'm going to say OK. And now you see this, there's this huge sky replacement group. And if you click that, it'll put it all into one little thing. And as you get more proficient, you might start to stick bunches of layers into groups as a method for working to keep kind of help you understand. Once again, in order for this assignment to work and be able to really colorize things, you're going to want to flatten this layer. So I've done this flatten image a bunch of times, and just so you can kind of see how this has worked. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get my brush tool, and I'm going to start painting in some colors into this. And since I don't want to really mess with my original image, what I'm going to do is add a new layer down here by clicking on this little plus, and it kind of gives me a whole new layer. And you can name these layers by just kind of double clicking on them, and when they turn blue you can name it. I'm going to name this one color. And all that does is it just tells me what this layer is. And what I'm going to do is make this actually a color layer. And my brush, I'm going to put my brush as a normal brush with kind of a pretty solid opacity so you can see what I'm doing a little more. But see this, so this adjusts the brush, that adjusts the layer. And they're two different things, two different adjustments. So when I'm painting in this layer, I can actually then, let's say I wanted to paint this background a certain color. I can choose a color by clicking over here and find a color that works for me and say OK. And you'll see it adds it automatically up here to these colors that I've recently used. And if I wanted to, you can kind of see that little circle. If I push on the brackets on the right, the circle gets bigger, and the brackets on the left, the circle gets smaller. And that's how you change your brush size as a shortcut. And I can take this and then just change the color of this water by doing this, by just painting over it. And you'll notice it's not changing the values. You know, it's leaving the dark areas dark and the light areas light, but it's just changing the color in there. And you may or may not like that. Maybe that's too blue for you or whatever, but that's how you can just adjust really easily the color of things. Now, if I want to change the opacity of my brush and make it just really change it down even less so it barely shows up, I can also, if I did too much blue and I want to erase it, I can go to my eraser tool, and that also has a size. You see the circle? I can make the circle bigger, and I can change the opacity of that as well. It's at 14, it's pretty low. So I can get rid of some of what the color I added if I didn't want to add as much color. Anyway, so you have that ability to erase these layers, and it's all within this layer. It's not on the background. So if I get rid of it, you can see I can get rid of it. Now, if I want to, if I'm like painting with my brush tool, and the shortcut to get to brush tool, they'll tell you it's like B. Just hit B and you'll go back to brush. By clicking on things like B and E, you can save yourself a lot of time. So if I've got my brush tool on and I want to, like, say, sample this color of the sky because I want it reflected in the water, I'll just hit the option button and that little thing called the eyedropper tool comes up. I click on that, And all of a sudden, the color that's here is the color that's in that sky. And I just by doing this, I get to kind of change that color of the water that it actually makes it this color. Now, if I want to, change this color a little bit, I could like say, I want to make it a little more yellow. So this gets to be like painting a little bit, where you kind of like changing your colors just slight amounts. And now my opacity is pretty low, so I could just kind of like add a little more yellow down here, and maybe a little of this color in here. And there's been some subtle things I've been able to do by just doing those little subtle things. Now, let's say I wanted to really increase the wood color on this kind of wood section here. I can either go back to here, double click on this, and kind of like scroll my way up to find like some kind of warm woodish color here. Or I could go to one of the colors I previously used and click on that. But I'm going to just, since I'm here, click on that. And you'll see it appears there. It's pretty, low opacity. I can change my brush tool and pump it up a little bit if I want, like, and really get the color to show up a little more. Now, if I want to get a nice rusty color for this railroad track, I can kind of pull it down here. So there's all these ways of changing the color, but this is one of the easier ones. Zoom in on your picture so you can get a better clue of it. And if you get too far, you see how pixelated it is. And change the brush size down, and just kind of paint this. If that's not opaque enough for you, pull it up a little higher, and you'll see it just really changes how opaque it is. Here's this nice iron thing here. So with this colorizing assignment, you can spend a long time. It's like doing a little mini painting. Be patient. Allow yourself to really sit there and color things. Change your brush size, because if you're trying to work with a giant space, it's good to have a big brush size. And if you're working with a really small space, it's kind of nice to have a smaller brush. Okay, so anyways, that's the color one. And since this is a lesson in terms of using different kinds of opacity and different modes, you can see what happens if I were to change this mode here to different modes. So that's called color. And what I'm going to do is now add another layer, and I'm going to name this one overlay. And the overlay mode basically adds a little more information to it. So let's say I'm doing this guy's coat, and I want to really change the color in it a little more to this kind of brown color. By using the overlay, it allows me to really make a bigger shift in terms of value, in terms of, it'll be more the color I'm picking rather than just changing the color. It'll kind of change the value a little bit as well. Not totally like if I were doing normal. And let's do this green for his hat. So you can see his hat is getting a little green, which is cool. Change the size a little bit. Now, if I want to make a real abrupt shift, I would create a whole other layer, and I'm going to name this layer normal. And by doing the normal layer, I can go here to my brush, and I can always change the opacity of my brush. I can start kind of low if I want. And I'm going to do this red here and shrink my brush down and just like give him a little hat band. You can see what happens with the hat band. See, it's like it allows me to actually paint a little bit. And if I then go over it with a little more opaque, I can really bring that red up a little bit in one corner to really pull that out. So I can flip between these layers. Because this normal layer is above the overlay, if you can see, if I drag this above there, it changes the way that looks. Not that much because it's transparent so much, but that's an important technique for changing the way a color looks. Let's add a little skin color to this guy here. Let's pick that color here. You can also pick, if you want to change tones or something, like let's give him just a kind of a banal skin tone here. In the normal, you see that's almost too bright, so I want to go just to color, and I'm going to just kind of adjust the color here, give him a little warmth to his skin tone. Let me give him a little bit of color in his hair. And yeah, there we go. And you can do the same thing we did with some of the other things where you take the overlay and kind of make it a little more intense. Go back to a skin tone. And let's do this a little bit of more undo. Let's take the brush level down and give them a little more color there. And you see I'm kind of almost painting with it. Then you could go to normal, and I could add like a highlight or something in there. You can go back to this color, brighten it up, take a little here, and then just a little in the hair there. There, nice. Okay, and the same could be true for his hand. I could go back to this color here and get it colored, and then just get a little of the overlay in there to kind of like brighten it up, and then take the normal and kind of add some back to color. Let's get the opacity way up. There. Nice. Okay, and there you have it. Basically, you can see it starting to come together. Okay, one more trick I want to show you is when you get this kind of where you want it, and you're happy with the whole piece as a whole, and you're looking at it and you're like, okay, this whole thing looks good. You can go to layer and flatten the entire thing, and then if you go to image and you go to auto color, it's kind of like amazing what it'll do. It'll automatically fix a lot of your color problems. You can undo that if you want, but so you can go to auto color, and if you don't like how much it did, you go to fade auto color, and you can just take this and just take it down so it's just a bit of their auto color in there, and that will give you a lot of ability to play with it by just kind of making just maybe only want 20% of its change, of its automatic change. You can also go to image, and you can adjust the hue and saturation if you want to pump up the saturation, say, since it's like we're actually trying to colorize this thing. If you want to increase the lightness or darken it, however you want to take it. And once again, that trick of going to edit afterwards and fading that so that you don't have to take the whole shebang, it really allows you a little more subtlety. You can then go to File and Export as, and you can I would always export it in the highest. And, for this assignment, we've been doing it, let's keep it at 1200, just make it a little bigger for folks. And you can just export it. And there you go. So I hope you enjoy working with these new AI tools and that you can make some beautiful pieces out of this and find unique ways to use the tools for yourself. And I hope that we can have some really great discussions on the discussion page. Looking forward to talking to you, and I'll see you on the next run.